Mason has been terrorizing college football over the past 2 seasons, winning back-to-back Heismans with his prowess throwing and running the ball. With the NCAA finally approving this 12-team playoff, Mason and the Tigers have high expectations to win their second national championship in 3 seasons. With this pressure mounting, it'll be up to Mason to perform to his standards to lead LSU back to the promised land and to be possibly called the GOAT of college football. And in season 3, the Tigers begin ranked number 4 as Arizona State is welcomed to the Baton Rouge at the beginning of this revenge tour. The first play of the season begins off with a bang as Mason finds Brian Thomas deep down the right sideline as he is hawked after a huge gain into ASU territory. Mason would then connect with Thomas yet again on the slant in the red zone as we start to show why we are contenders yet again. But these teams still don't realize that sending pressure will not work against this quarterback as Mason escapes from the defense and runs 10 yards backwards before finding the left side to maneuver his way down to the 27-yard line. Some people may say Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, and Arizona State is learning that the hard way as they still send pressure yet again, but Mason finds Malik Neighbors on the out route and in the slant in the red zone as we are pushed ahead by 14. Still here in the first quarter, Mason is slicing up the defense left and right as he finds Chris Hilton down the right side and he gains a first down. Now in the red zone, Mason's legs are always a key as he keeps his speed option and trucks through 3 defenders to force his way into the end zone. Arizona State is showing the fact that they simply cannot hang with this offense as Mason connects with Brian Thomas on the corner and scrambles away untouched as we are now up 28-0. We may honestly be taken out soon if we are firing on all cylinders like this as this blowout continues as Mason finds Brian Thomas on the streak down the right side and he sprints away similarly to what he did before to cross the pylon as we defeat Arizona State 48-20. Now game 2 puts us here in Knoxville, Tennessee as they are up on us early, but Mason is going to quiet the crowd by firing a dot to Neighbors right on the tee and strikes to John McBride deep on the seam who places him within the red zone into place. Now in second and goal, Mason scrambles away per usual but finds Neighbors at the very last possible second in the checkered end zone. Now Brian Thomas is starting to wake up before our very eyes as he breaks away from the defense on the left side, receives the ball from Mason and uses his grown man strength to push away this defender before eventually being brought down. And the favorite play for this team in the red zone is simply just put Mason up the gut versus everybody as he keeps the speed option and makes his way into the end zone to regain the lead. Now yet again on the run, Mason keeps his eyes downfield to find John McBride before being pushed out of bounds, and the M&M connection, Mason the Mason, arrives finally as they find themselves celebrating the end zone as Mason Taylor shrugs through 2 defenders. And on our very next possession, there is a sea of green grass down the right side as Mason notices this and sprints away before only getting touched by crossing midfield and brought down at the 45. Teams still have not realized that if they play with fire by blitzing, they're gonna get burned as Mason finds Lundy and streaks away from the defense into the end zone from 45 yards away. This game has simply just been another blowout, but now Mason converts by threading the needle to Chris Hilton in the red zone and the John McBride on the out route as we are up by 25, and that last score pushed us to defeat the Volunteers 49-17 on the road here in Knoxville, Tennessee. I really have no idea why we get these cupcake games on our schedule, but Eastern Michigan is in town as Mason starts off to Brian Thomas on the curl and keeps the option for himself in what seems like he's going to take it all the way, but get hawks down at the 4-yard line. This team in offense is just simply unstoppable as no team can hope to contain them as drive after drive we end up scoring touchdowns, and we have another chance with the first coming to a close, but Mason shows his breakaway speed before crashing into the left pylon. And on almost every single drop back, Mason seems to be running away from something, but he always finds a way to make something out of nothing as Brian Thomas races into the end zone on this play. Again, Mason versus the world in the red zone as he takes it by himself into the paint. Mason simply got tired of running for his life and he decided to throw the ball to Brian Thomas for once down the right sideline, which establishes the M&M connection to come back even more as he finds Mason Taylor in the corner of the end zone as we defeated Eastern Michigan 55-21 to warm up for the rest of the season. Our first test of the season comes against those bell-ringing Bulldogs. They travel to Mississippi State as we are ranked number 2 in the nation in the recent coaches poll. But there's nothing like an SEC matchup in the poor ring that excites a star quarterback. But Mason makes do as no matter what balls can impact his play as accurate throws to Taylor and Thomas to take the lead. Raining games in the South always make up for a game based on running the football as Mason keeps it for himself as there are pancakes everywhere from this blocking and he races away from the defense as nobody can catch him into the end zone. However, those dogs came to bark as they tied the game up, but Mason starts to put them in the kennel as he slid for the first down in their territory and found a wide open Chris Hilton Jr. to take the lead 21-14. Mason still continues to run away from this defense like we all did a neighborhood dog as he escapes down the right sideline before eventually being pushed out past the 30-yard line and does so again in the red zone as nobody even spies Mason as he takes it in to take a 2-possession lead. Now with a close game here in the third, all we need to do is Tigers take these dogs on a walk and put them to sleep as Mason unleashes one to Taylor and dimes up one to Neighbors on the right pylon to defeat Mississippi State 35-28. No amount of Wildcat flags being flown at college game day will be able to prevent Washington State from a beatdown here, as Mason finds Brian Thomas and keeps the ball for himself on the goal line for a quick 7-0 lead. Yet again, nobody seems to be able to contain Mason as he escapes a defender who eats the grass and roams free down the left sideline, bends away from a defender to make it down to the 40-yard line. The key has always been Mason's legs, as he has embodied the Tiger spirit with his speed and goes in the end zone untouched. M&Ms come in all shapes and sizes as Mason finds Mason on the right sideline, who toe taps for the catch. And now in the red zone, it took forever for Mason to find Goodwin in the end zone, but he finally does while taking a shot from this defender. No team can hope to contain him. No team can hope to stop him. They can only hope and pray to find a way to stop Mason as he rolls in and out of the defense to run for a 65-yard touchdown to lead the way in dominating fashion against Washington State 49-3. Somehow these college teams still have not game planned for Mason's ability to scramble, as he is untouched down into the goal line and keeps the ball for himself to give the LSU their lead on their first drive. However, our offense did stall out as it's now right before half and it's 10-7. We got on our horse, and with this throw to Lundy and Mason Taylor with under a minute remaining to pull away from the chomp. Mason seemingly likes to scramble a little early at times, but as he tries to run, he finds Chris Hilton deep over the middle and on the goal line for a 14-point lead. Finally, in this close affair, Mason decides to seal the deal and not become Gator bait, as on this play action he notices wide open grass on the right side as Florida sends the blitz and gets chomped over as Mason races down the sideline and nobody will touch him on the way to the end zone as LSU defeats Florida 31-24. We have yet another top 25 road matchup as we travel to Ole Miss against Lane Kiffin, as we pick apart the Lone Shark defense with a dime to McBride over the middle to pass midfield. And now this one-man offense continues as Mason carries the team into the end zone early on. But now we are put back to the test as Ole Miss tied the game up at 7, but Mason finally decided to lock in throwing the ball to his favorite target, Malik Neighbors, on the sideline, and we finally regain the lead as a dot is thrown to Chris Hilton in the back corner of the end zone. Now here in the second half, Mason does what he does best by rolling away from the pressure in any possible contain to go untouched to the 45 before he cuts across the safety and gets brought down. And yet again, nothing new here as Mason decides to keep it for himself to power through into the end zone. The defense created a turnover on their side of the field, and we capitalized as Mason found space on the right side for the go-ahead score as we defeated the Rebels 31-28. Auburn, as they are up 7-0 here in the first, but Mason scrambles away as nobody is open and is brought down in Auburn territory. Maybe Mason left the pocket a little too early here, but he makes up for it as he steamrolls through Auburn defenders and forces his way to tie the game. But I still am dumbfounded as to how many defensive coordinators simply don't game plan for Mason's legs as he takes it away to the left and gets tripped up around the 10-yard line. And the same thing applies here as nobody covers Mason on the option and he keeps it for himself into the end zone. Auburn did tie the game up, but Mason is showing the NFL scouts his arm talent by scrambling out to the right and with a flick of the wrist chucks it to John McBride to the other 30-yard line before he scampers away into the red zone. And once again, Mason calls his own number as he walks into the paint as we take a 7-point lead. Here right before the half, Mason should have hit Brian Thomas earlier, but he eventually does, and Brian has a shot to the end zone but gets blown up out of bounds. And we finally get our running back Armani Goodwin involved as he takes the wheel out up to the right pylon to take a 2-possession lead. The pressure still comes against Mason, but he unleashes a dot on the sideline as Neighbors finds a way to hang on to the ball, and Mason threads the needle to McBride in between two defenders on the seam as we are running away from Auburn in this one, as we would inevitably defeat the Tigers here in Baton Rouge 49-14. The reins of the SEC West will be decided on our next matchup as the leader in the standings and ranked number 2 LSU travel to Tuscaloosa to take on the Crimson Tide and Bryant Denny. And Bama would jump on us early as Mason continues to evade the pressure to make his way down the right sideline and find Neighbors on the goal line as LSU regains the lead. However, that would be our last score until the fourth quarter as Mason got the momentum going to Chris Hilton and ran away from the defense to the left sideline as we defeat the Tide in a low-scoring affair 17-14. That win launched us to the number 1 rank in the nation as we finally have a cupcake matchup once again as Nevada comes into town without the Sphere from Vegas. Starting in this one, Mason continues this legendary season by connecting with Neighbors on the left side, and he rolls out to the right to find Chris Hilton, who toe taps his way for the 7-0 lead. However, Nevada somehow tied this game at 7, but Mason puts that notion to bed by finding Brian Thomas deep over the middle and Neighbors on the slant yet again for another score. And with less than a minute before half, Mason and the Tigers still have plenty of time to score as he hits McBride on the out route and he gets out of bounds, and Mason Taylor benefits as on 3rd and goal he breaks free as now we are putting the Wolfpack down. Right out of the half, Mason would not be caught by anybody as he has Gus Johnson would put it, get away from the cop speed down the left side to punch it in from 60 yards out. You would think a pack of wolves would be able to keep up with a lone quarterback, but Nevada's cannot do so, as Mason pulls away and weaves in and out to place the offense into Nevada territory. And here we are in Nevada territory as Mason dimes up to Brian Thomas over the linebacker as we defeat the Wolfpack by a score of 42-10. Now we face the fraud in the Texas A&M Aggie, as no amount of NIL money can make them any good, as Mason starts with a bomb to Brian Thomas down the right sideline, and he calls the crib on his path to the end zone. Not only did Mason get it done in one play with his arm, but A&M forgot to even cover him on the option, as he gets key blocks from his receivers downfield, and Mason clocks in as the fastest player from the next gen stats, and some may even say he's faster than Tyreek Hill. Now another Mason gets in on the action as Taylor toe taps on the sideline, and the quarterback Mason Armstrong runs for his life on the 4th down to punch his way into the end zone once again. Now with nobody open, Mason has to escape the D-line, and for the billionth time in his career shows his elusiveness as he spins away from the defender, and the wide receiver pancakes the safety way downfield, and Mason races away before finally getting hawked down. Now once again, the goal line guy in Neighbors gets the ball on 4th down, as hopefully we don't blow a 28-3 lead. A&M is trying to come back though as they score on their drive, but Brian Thomas would have scored on his own once again, but he barely stepped out of bounds. But on the very next play, Mason delivers an early Christmas gift to his other Mason buddy as he takes it away to the end zone, and we end up blowing out the Aggies 56-24. With one game left before the SEC championship, we have to be sure we don't overlook the Razorbacks on our path to another title, as Mason leads the team early with throws to Neighbors and dots on the run to Osborne before finally finding Brian Thomas on the 1-yard line for the lead. We would stall out for a little bit in the first, but Mason gets back on his horse by rolling out and finding Neighbors, who does a lot of the work after the catch and is brought down in plus territory. Now back in the red zone, Mason slices it up to Brian in between defenders as we are now up 14-0. And at this point, Mason is making these hogs in the bacon as he takes the ball for himself, bends away from defenders, and it is now 24-0. And it does not matter who you attempt to cover, somebody's going to break open in this offense as Chris Hilton gets it on the seam before Brian Thomas scores yet another touchdown on the cover 2 hole shot. Finally, here in the second half, Mason is going to keep the read option and is going to be gone as nobody will even touch him up the gut as a convoy leads Mason into the student section side as LSU would defeat Arkansas 59-27. The final standings in the SEC pits us against number 12 Florida in Atlanta for the conference championship. And on our first drive, Mason would continue his dominance by launching a missile down the field to John McBride, making his way past the 20-yard line. And yet again, slants on the goal line get us a score as Brian Thomas is the recipient here. Thomas continues his own legendary season as on the scramble drill, he is the recipient of the ball over the middle. And yet again, McBride gets the ball between 2 defenders on the seam as another team simply cannot hang with us. But Florida would prove that they could hang as they came back to take the lead 21-14. But we get back up after being punched in the face as Mason finds Brian Thomas on the right side to even the playing field. McBride is the one balling out in this game as he is open yet again on a seam and fights forward for more yards, and Chris Hilton gets open on his seam route to receive the go-ahead score here in the third. But once again, we are tied here at 28 as Mason scrambles to the right side, breaks away from the defense, makes the move, and fights forward yet again for more yards. And once again on the run, Mason throws an absolute laser on the sideline to Brian Thomas for the lead. And with one more score, Mason and the Tigers could claim another SEC title as Mason finds Malik Neighbors before calling his own number up the gut to claim the SEC and clinch our spot in the 12-team playoff. Mason would unanimously take the Heisman yet again for the third straight season with over 4,100 passing yards, 2,229 rushing yards, and 72 total touchdowns, perhaps the greatest season in college football history. And here we are in the inaugural 12-team playoff as us and Ohio State both get first round byes as we would go against the winner of Alabama and FAU in the first round of the playoff. And here we are as we jump across the first round matchups. Alabama would steamroll FAU in the first round 40-0. Penn State would take down Cincinnati close one 38-25 to move on to the second round as well. And in a narrow victory, the Gators come away from defeat against Boise State 27-24. Now here we are at Notre Dame versus Georgia Tech as Notre Dame's running back G. Brian Payne gets the handoff on the power, takes it to the outside across the pylon for the game-winning score against Georgia Tech. And with that being said, our first round matchup is a rematch against Alabama here in the Peach Bowl as Mason gets started to Brian Thomas across the middle. Mason keeps this drive momentum alive as he finds Malik Neighbors down the left sideline before going up the gut untouched into Alabama's end zone to take the lead. However, Bama would regain the lead before the end of the first, but we are starting to call plays to use Mason's legs to their advantage as he keeps the option, sets up his blocks to pass midfield. Bama's weaknesses over the years has always been mobile quarterbacks as on the scramble, Mason weaves inside, races back to the outside to outstretch the trailing defense and has open space to the pylon for another score. But things would get a little dicey here on 4th down, but Mason barely threads the needle to Kyron Lacey that could have easily been intercepted, but Lacey snatches it out of the air and makes his way down to the 11-yard line. And in the red zone, our running back makes a beautiful backside block in the blitz to allow us to freely throw to Malik Neighbors as he is wide open for the score. And nobody seems to cover Mason on any sort of option, and after 3 years you would think somebody would make that decision, but he keeps it here on the triple option and gets brought down at the 20-yard line. And from here, it's the scrambling down unalive Bama as he moves to the right side to create open space, brings forward before spinning away from 3 defenders and trucks a man in the end zone for yet another rushing touchdown. Bama would continuously send pressure as they do here, but it stays burning them as Mason finds open field anytime they do as he takes off down the right side, passes the diving defender before finally being hawked down. Now Mason finally decides to keep his eyes upfield as he finds Malik streaking up the sideline and into the end zone as we score once again right before half. Bama defensive coordinator Kevin Steele seems to completely ignore any adjustments as when the D-line breaks through, there's still not a quarterback spy, which leaves Mason wide open to extend our lead even further. Now what would be the nail in the coffin here would be Mason Armstrong in the quarterback powers. He takes it down the right side and Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to be too slow to catch him, as well as Terrion Arnold, as this would mark a new career long for the quarterback as we would defeat Alabama 69-20. Mason Armstrong would finish with an astounding 348 rushing yards and 5 total touchdowns on the day to advance to the second round of the college football playoffs. Notre Dame is lining up to kick a game-winning field goal against Clemson as it goes to the upside as the Irish survive and advance. SA completely drubs Florida as the Gators wave the white flag and simply run the ball. Syracuse is holding on to a lead here late as Penn State is trying their best to come back and win as they heave a pass in the end zone for it to be broken up as the Orange upset the Nittany Lions. And after this upset, Syracuse would be matched up against us here in the second round as Mason starts by throwing an interception right to Clark, and he tries to make up for it by laying the wood, but becomes a nail as Clark trucks through him and takes it to the house. Mason would right back on the next drive as he hits the whole shot to Neighbors on the right sideline before pushing his way into the end zone to cut the deficit. However, Syracuse would extend their lead to 10 here in the second, but Mason finds space down the right sideline, makes it to the 40 untouched before spinning his way forward down to the 33-yard line. Mason's legs are going to be key in coming back in this game as Malik Neighbors whiffs on the block, but it doesn't matter as Mason sheds the tackle and sprints to the left pylon for yet another score. Right out of half, Mason realizes that the offense needs a drive to swing back the momentum in their favor as he rolls out and unleashes a bomb to the right sideline to running back Noah Kane as he sheds the tackle as well. Mason would find Neighbors on the out route and he walks in untouched right after. Momentum is beginning to swing in our favor as Mason keeps his midline option and sees a wide open hole up the middle and nobody can even touch him as he crosses midfield, breaks another tackle, and is brought down shy of the 25. And Mason takes no time to put the Orange on their heels as he finds Neighbors on the seam route and right on the goal line before keeping it himself on the keeper to push the lead to 8. Now with an 11-point lead here in the third, Mason will keep the triple option for himself and nobody's going to be able to catch him as there is open grass after Mason makes a cut inside and outraces everybody to the end zone. And after that runaway score, we would advance to the national championship by defeating Syracuse 48-20 as Mason yet again rushed for an astounding 316 yards on 27 carries, totaling 5 touchdowns. And on the other side, Notre Dame would line up for another game-winning field goal in overtime against Ohio State as they push it to the upright and march on to the national championship as well. Here, where the lights are the brightest, Mason still shows his dominance as on the read option. He keeps it for himself, follows his blocks, and outraces the defense on the first offensive snap to give us a 7-0 lead. But when you thought he was done, he still came back as on the second drive of the game, we decided to run it back because it worked before as Mason keeps the option, sheds the tackle on the left side, and this was his Heisman moment as he escapes to the opposite side of the defense and nobody will catch him as he is going to score in the brightest time of his career. 2 rushes and 2 touchdowns on 2 plays for the LSU offense. Mason decided to finally use his arm as he scrambled to the right side and found Mason Taylor just shy of the goal line before finding Taylor once again as we are now up by 20 in the national championship. But we would stagnate until halfway in the second quarter before Mason finds Brian Thomas right in the face of pressure as he makes his way to the corner of the end zone to extend our lead. Mason has shown his talents both with his arms and his legs, while that continues here in the pocket as he throws an absolute dime on the seam to Aaron Anderson before being brought down past the 40. And now on the goal line, Mason punches forward on the quarterback keeper as we are dominating in the natty. Cut the lead down to 11 in the second half, but Mason makes a wild cross-body throw on the left side of the field, and Kyron Lacey puts his body on the line to make this reception. And yet again, Mason is using his legs to make inhuman throws on the run as he does the same here, but this time to Mason Taylor just short of the goal line before keeping himself on another QB keeper to give us some breathing room. Fourth quarter, it's crunch time as Notre Dame now has it 41-30 37, so this LSU team and Mason has to come through in the clutch as Mason finds Logan Diggs in between two defenders. The Irish still did not make any adjustments to the triple option as Mason kept it on the goal line to take a bigger lead. Now what seems to be the final nail in the coffin, we run yet another read option as Notre Dame has not figured out how to stop it as Mason spins away from the corner, sheds another tackle, and races free down the left sideline from the defense to seal and LSU another national championship as Mason had yet another absurd day with 648 total yards, 8 total touchdowns. And not only did that performance seal the Natty, but Mason has solidified himself as the greatest quarterback in college football history and possibly the greatest NFL draft prospect of all time.